Hi, my name is Lesa Mitchell. We were asked to do TED-like talks, and I'm a coach for the TED Fellows, so if I screw up, I'm going to be really embarrassed. So I'd like to start, and I think, can you see my slides? Yes? No? I can see my slides. Okay, can they see my slides? Yes, okay. So I'd like to talk about how do we get to economic stability and resilience. And I think you have to start that discussion with asking yourself some questions about what's going on in your city. Does everyone have a job? Will we recover from a crisis? That's how you figure out resilience. And with what we have coming relative to climate change, and I think it's GE that is assuming that we're going to have something like 12 literally major weather crises in every given year that are going to cost billions of dollars. Can your city recover from a crisis? Is our population growing at the level of a city, a state, or a country? And is there population churn? And what I mean by that is there's been a lot of economic analysis of the number of people that come in and out of a city, meaning literally moving in and out of a city, that really help us understand if you're going to have innovation at the level of your city. And so you have to look at these types of things relative to your city to understand, are we going to have economic stability and resilience? And what I'd like for you all to think about in my next couple of slides is the city as a platform and how we use a city as a platform to spur on social innovation, economic innovation, and growth. And I want to give you some examples of people that I've worked with throughout the world. And I've spent, just as a context, I spent the last 11 years as the Vice President of Innovation and Networks with the Kauffman Foundation, helped launch the Global Entrepreneurship Week years ago, worked with the White House on how do we do recovery in the United States, and have traveled the world to meet with people like you. And so let me give you some examples. And I also want to say that I've been part of this discussion for 11 years on should we care more about for-profit organizations versus not-for-profit organizations, and I've come to discover that it's a bullshit discussion. And so what I'd like to say is what's most important is that you start and you scale. And we can spend time thinking about what, and I feel bad saying this because I've spent a lot of time on the policy front. You can spend time talking about what policies you should have, but I would say you need to spend time starting to talk about what you can start and what you can scale. In most cases, it's not new policies we need, it's policies we need to get rid of. So let me start with an example, and I want to give you this example because this is what changed my mind 8 years ago. I was a negative person on social innovation. I thought we should only care about for-profit organizations and growth. And a friend of mine by the name of Desh Deshpande in the United States, in Boston, he's from India, and he is a serial entrepreneur in every scale word you can imagine. And he wanted to change my mind, and so he talked me into coming to India with him under the pretense of speaking at a large entrepreneurship organization conference, of which there was 1,500 people that showed up and they ran out of tents. But that's a whole nother India discussion. But what he wanted me to see is something that he had funded, a not-for-profit innovation that is all about scale, because he's all about scale. It's called Akshapatra, and when I walked into this massive temple, he said to me, the goal that I had is figuring out how we can feed all of the children in our school systems, the young children in our school systems that literally are not eating all day and fall asleep in the afternoon, and how could we do this at a scale level for something like 5 cents a day? And I thought, yeah, that sounds nice. And he immediately introduced me to a man in an orange robe that underneath his robe pulled out a MacBook Air, and I'm literally in the middle of a temple with dirt floors. We walked downstairs into a conference room, and he begins a presentation to show me how they began thinking using engineering terms and technologies. So back to your Arduino example as a perfect segue, and figured out how to feed 1 million children a day literally through that temple, which is Ashkapatra. The gentleman in the orange robe happened to be a PhD from Caltech, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. But in walking downstairs, and you can see, this is a newer picture because this is not a dirt floor, but in most cases they are. Can you guys see this? Yes, okay. In most cases, in most churches and temples, it is a dirt floor. This is like a sophisticated one. All the way down to developing buses that had heating elements around the outside and kind of a robotic sliding scheme to push all of the bins down there. And it was at this moment in my life when I said, actually, social innovation and not-for-profits can probably, which is embarrassing because I worked for a foundation, can probably be more impactful in many cases than for-profit organizations. So this was a turning point for me. And I'd like to give you my second one. And this is where I say, start something. So I met Eric Hersma, who is on Twitter, and I put my Twitter profile up here because I believe Twitter is all about social change. We did our first startup weekend in Cairo, the weekend before the meltdown in Egypt. When I met Eric, whose Twitter handle is White African, Eric was the co-founder of something called Ushahidi. Has anybody here heard of Ushahidi? Okay, we have a few. So Ushahidi was started specifically by a bunch of tech people in Nairobi who were trying to figure out how to solve all of the rapes that were happening. So it was literally, how do we create a mobile platform that identifies where bad actions are happening? Ushahidi has turned into something completely different. We're actually now trying to figure out how to move Ushahidi to the United States and cities to spot crime, which is funny at the end of the day. So it's gone from Kenya to the world. But the story here is of a group of I would call them young entrepreneurs, and I use entrepreneurs in a for-profit and not-for-profit way, who started something that has grown into something completely different. Now iHub is in Nairobi. iHub is a place where essentially if you go to Nairobi and you're interested in figuring out where all the cool things are happening, you go to iHub. iHub is a place where they're training tons of kids to code. It's a place where all the startups are happening. And then most recently in Vancouver, just a couple of months ago, Jeff Immelt from GE showed up literally just to meet with Eric and talk to him about something called Brick. Brick looks exactly like a brick, and Brick is where they're going to figure out how you create wireless technology and energy from a source that looks like a brick. So they're going hardware now, is I guess the story. And the point of this is, this was a group of people who decided to just kind of take on the world themselves and solve problems that they didn't see their social structure solving. And now they've created what I would call a renaissance in Kenya and Nairobi that's spreading very fast. Another example, again, linked back to Arduino, Dale Doherty, who's the founder of an organization called Make, I met about 8 or 9 years ago, and I said to Dale, why don't we use Maker Faire as a platform, and a platform in a city to help people, to get kids engaged, adults engaged, all the makers in the community. I gave them a small grant to create what they call a Maker Faire playbook. The next couple of years, they had a couple of Maker Fairs. We now have Maker Fairs, or they have Maker Fairs all over the world. Dale has done, you have them, I know, throughout Italy as well. In some cases, they're small. In some cases, they're, the San Francisco Maker Faire is the oldest one. And 2 months ago, there was 100,000 people that showed up at Maker Faire. Maker Faire is transforming cities. The other examples I give here is DIY.org is a great online technology company to teach kids how to make. Any of you that aren't using it, you totally should get online with your kids. Other examples are Inventables, which is a platform, if you're a maker, to help you get access to the tools that you need. And all of you know about drones today and how they're going to change delivery. And the point of this slide isn't even about the technology, but it's about a movement that occurred because of Maker Faire, because of anybody who can start a Maker Faire, getting our kids engaged, and most importantly, thinking about the skills that you need for the future. This is our future. And if we don't get our kids engaged in our future, and if you don't think the older population, Zach Kaplan, who's has an awesome TED Talk and is the let's we launched the competition. The winner of the competition was an 80-year-old man in Seattle, Washington. We were shocked. We thought it was going to be young, cool, hip people. And it was actually a guy that never went to college, has a number of patents to his name, and used to be, I think you would call him kind of like a mechanic before he retired. And so I think the Maker platform is a great example of the opportunity to engage an entire community. And my last but not least slide, I'm on the board of a foundation in San Francisco called Althea. And it's a perfect example of you don't have to be a massive foundation like Kauffman or CRT or examples that you have here. This is not a massive foundation, it's a good-sized foundation, and they have funded a couple of things, but focused on scale. Along with the Prince of Wales, who's funded something similar in the UK, they funded Youth Business America. And in their case, Youth Business America, they identified a city, again, it's about place, that there was a high level of what we call underserved population, people out of work, back to my questions, put some low interest loans simply to try to get youth jobs, surround them with mentors, and help them scale. What's happened with that original $582,000 that was raised is there's now $1.8 million that are being put to work, and that's because they made money. The kids made money. They had experience in doing this. They've done the same thing. Althea has done the same thing in terms of increasing the number and support of women. We know that, frankly, in most of the world, it's not engaging our youth and it's not engaging women in both for-profit and not-for-profit activities that's creating the problem. So I always ask, look around, especially if you're with a bunch of entrepreneurs. If everyone is a 25-year-old white male, you're not engaging your population. So make sure that you have diversity everywhere you are. Make sure you're engaging your youth, and everyone is engaged. And last but not least, my slide is, I could tell he's gonna pull me off the stage here in a minute. We should all be thinking about one thing. How do we grow economies and expand human welfare? Sorry. Okay, well that is much better. Sorry, do you want me to start over? Okay, and so here's to close. You can look at my slides later. You have to think about everything you're doing at scale. Small, I gave you the Akshik Patra example because small soup kitchens are not helpful. They help a couple of people that they feed, but at the end of the day, they use more resources than they return. Think about scale. In the interdependent and interconnected environment that we're in, think about how you are giving access to your next generation to teach them to make things, to teach them to code, and it doesn't matter if they're rich, poor, etc. Everyone can be pulled into this loop. And most importantly, be a place that people want to move. So the most important metric I think you should be thinking about is how many people are moving to your city. Who are they? How old are they? Because you and I both know you need to be attracting the young generation. And if you're not a place that people want to move to, how do you become that place that people want to move to? And then how do you make your city thrive? Thank you.
Una raccomandazione per il pubblico. Alla fine dei tre speech.
Now, at the end of the three speeches, we'll open the floor to questions. So I'm here, and I hope to be hit by a barrage of questions at the end of this session. These speakers, however, are going to be with us throughout the day. So I don't want them to be lonely today. I want to make sure that during breaks they are overwhelmed by proposals and questions and inputs and comments. They're here today. So take this opportunity. Don't be shy. Don't be too courteous. Just go ahead.